The voice of the lion was heard in the land. A Good Omens fanfiction, written by A.N.D., read aloud by SkyAsimaru. If you enjoy this podfic, you can check out the original story on Archive of Our Own. If you would like to hear more of my recordings or see some of my own work, you can find me through the pen and screen name of SkyAsimaru. The voice of the lion was heard in the land. Summary. Everyone said that working on the Leo and Friends cartoon was like heaven. It was so much fun. Until a homophobic campaign attacks Tony Crowley, voice of Simon the Snake, and he is cast out. As paradise crumbles, Aziraphale is faced with a dilemma. Can he save both Tony and Leo? Or is he going to have to choose between his heavenly job and the man he loves? Chapter 1. In the Beginning. Everyone said that working on Leo and Friends was like heaven. It was so much fun. And there were a lot of everyone's to say it. The cartoon was syndicated in over 100 countries and dubbed in almost as many languages. Its simple lessons of friendship, cooperation, forgiveness, and love, fitting beautifully into a wide variety of cultures, winning it millions of fans from all over the world. All of its many, many fans could quote its signature lines and sing its theme song and name their favorite episodes, but few of them knew much about the humans behind the show. But then, to be fair, most of the fans of Leo and Friends were about 6 years old. And since we are talking about young children, I will begin telling this story in proper style. Once upon a time, there was a man named Arthur, and he had a young son. Arthur Young believed that children, like chickens, should be raised free-range, outdoors with their companions all day, instead of inside staring at monitors and televisions and game screens. His little boy Adam thrived with the same sort of hands-off, semi-neglectful parenting that had been standard when Arthur was a child, when children were turfed out of the house early in the morning and allowed to roam all day, only showing up for meals. This was safer than it sounds. Lower Tadfield was small enough that, no matter where the children went, they would be under the eyes of someone who knew them and their parents. Also, Adam was a sensible child. Yes, he got into scrapes, and yes, he led his friends into adventures that sometimes went wrong. But on the whole, he was a sensible child with sensible friends, who wasn't going to get himself or them into trouble. Well, not too much trouble. However, Adam, also like chickens, balked at running around in the rain. Then and only then would Arthur relent and allow Adam to spend most of his time watching TV. Or he did, until one particularly wet summer taught Arthur just how many cartoons were really just extended-length adverts for candy masquerading as cereal, and toys. Horrified at the thought that Adam would be taught to replace his woodland hideaway and little gang for junk, plastic tat, and flickering screens. Inspired by the example set by Winnie the Pooh, Arthur turned off the TV and started entertaining his child by spinning stories based on the things Adam saw in his daily life. The cheerful drawing of a lion wearing a waistcoat and bow tie on his shower curtain. The dancing zebra on the same curtain. His stuffed rabbit and hedgehog. The garter snake Adam saw once in a show about an exotic pet store. He'd asked, begged really, but his mother strictly said no. Arthur was no Milne, but Adam listened politely, happy to have his father's undivided attention. Adam's friends listened even more eagerly when the rain was finally over and Adam passed the stories on, suitably revised to include fewer moral lessons and more pirates, detectives, thrilling chases, and sword fights. When Arthur found out about the new versions, he happily ceded the storytelling over, asking his son to tell him new stories about Leo and his friends during the next storm. Arthur would never be an effusive father, but he made sure that his son knew he appreciated Adam's inventiveness. Imagine a shower curtain covered in cartoon animals getting faded, dingy, and disappearing. Imagine much shabbier stuffed toys packed into a box, shoved under the bed, forgotten. Imagine crayon drawings replaced with posters of planets and stars. Imagine many books on reptile care. But don't imagine a snake in a tank, because some things, such as Deidre Young's opinion on scaly things in the house, will never change, no matter how much time passes. But still, when thunder shook the house and rain coated the windows so thickly nothing could be seen, Arthur would lean back in his chair, put down his newspaper, and ask, "Adam, has Leo been up to anything interesting lately?" Adam loved his little village, but it was far too little for the scope of his dreams and ambitions. One day he had to leave it, as did his friends, each to chase the future they wanted. But after they had graduated university, Adam assembled them all again. They were all finding it a hard go to make it in the professional world as recent graduates. Without much practical experience, they were stuck in fairly dead-end, boring jobs. So Adam, who always had the best ideas, offered them one more. What if they brought a handful of those old Leo stories to life? They would animate a handful, put them on the internet, and cite the experience as part of their resumes. Adam, always the best storyteller among them, would write the scripts. Pepper, a talented artist, would do the animation. Brian would handle the technology side, and Wensleydale would cover marketing. They had everything they needed, they thought. "I'm not animating that," Pepper said firmly. "That needs to be destroyed and never spoken of again." Brian had his head in his hands.
"Oh, anyone who heard that wouldn't just not hire us, they'd blacklist us,"
floated through his fingers.
I know, Adam said frantically. "All right, so we sound terrible doing the voices ourselves, but we can't hire real actors for all these characters. It would cost pots and pots of money."
"Not necessarily," Wensleydale adjusted his glasses, punching numbers into the calculator on his phone.
If we can get 1 or 2 actors willing to work for scale doing all the voices, and we record multiple scripts in a single session, we could do it for...
He turned the calculator to Adam, then around the table to the others.
That's still more than we can afford, Pepper objected. It took every spare pound we had to rent the recording studio just for us.
I wonder... Adam got that faraway look, the one that his friends had long since associated with mad ideas and leaps of faith that always seemed to work out. If we got a producer, they'd pay for it. That's what producers do.
Who'd be willing to give money to us?
Brian asked. Adam ignored him, dialing his phone.
Dad, I've got a question for you.
Tony Crowley sauntered into the tiny studio, sunglasses firmly fixed to his face. He needed this work, so he didn't need his new employers to know he was hung over from his disc jockey job the night before. Working the Green Carnation kept his rent paid, but acting was what he enjoyed, and this project looked like something that would make for a good sample reel. Lots of different voices, and the 2 scripts hadn't been utter shit. Not that anyone whose last voiceover job had been huskily whispering about lusciously lush, lathering shampoo was allowed to have standards at all, much less high ones. The only other man in the room was a portly blonde, all shabby, antiquated clothing, and palpable anxiety. There was something familiar about him, but his rumpled, nervous state made Tony abruptly stop thinking about script quality and start worrying if the check would clear. Nevertheless, it was important for Tony to be professional, so... With a steadying breath, Tony held out his hand to his employer.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, the other fellow chirped, offering his hand to shake. His palms were slightly wet, and he clung a little too long.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Young, he said formally.
Tony blinked behind his glasses.
I'm not Mr. Young. You are, he said blankly,
then instantly wanted to kick himself, or kill himself, or at least drink a pot of coffee before he tried talking coherently. The other man laughed nervously.
No, I'm Mr. Fell, Aziraphale.
The name meant nothing, although the voice intensified Tony's maddening sense of,
I know you. Why do I know you?
At Tony's blank stare, the stranger added,
Your voice actor?
Oh, great. A rival.
I'm the voice actor,
Tony said, trying to split the difference between questioning and accusatory, watching his hopes of laying a little extra money aside this month vanish. Just what he needed to get excited for a job and discover it was just an audition.
Oh, good. You're both here,
a new voice broke in. Tony turned, blinked, and blinked again. On the second blink, he realized he wasn't seeing double. Oh, obviously, the 2 were related. He'd never seen such a strong family resemblance. But no, he was not that hungover. And that was important if he was going to pass this audition. As he shook himself out of his momentary disorientation, he heard Az speaking.
Don't need both of us, surely. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity, and keep me in mind if...
This Az guy, this rival, was just giving the job away? Just up and protecting him? Judging by the state of his worn, if cared-for clothing, this other guy needed work as badly as Tony did, possibly more. The new two men, surely one of them must be Arthur Young, were shaking their heads. "Oh no," the younger Young assured Az. "We absolutely need you. From the moment I heard your voice in those tea adverts, I knew you were our one and only Leo. I'm so glad we were able to get you."
"Ah, that's why he's familiar."
The advertising campaign had ended a couple of years ago, but it had been famous enough to make Twilliker's Teas a roaring success. The adverts might have ostensibly been about how posh the tea was, but what they were really about was a slow-burn soap opera of two people falling in love. Nobody cared that the stuff tasted like bog-standard black tea. The whole country had been on edge, wondering if the main characters were ever going to get together through misunderstandings, romantic rivals, and even more romantic dates. The campaign ended on Valentine's Day with a searingly passionate kiss. The actors only belatedly holding a tin of Twillikers between them and the camera. Az was palpably relieved. "Oh, I'm available."
"Are you, though?"
Tony thought.
"Are you really available? I'll bet you're straight."
It had been a very passionate kiss. He wondered why that thought made him feel so sad. Az was continuing. "You'd be surprised how many people won't even consider me after that series. I thought I'd be the tea guy for the rest of my life, and royalties don't last forever." The older Young laughed. "Well, I doubt this will last long enough for you to get typecast here. I keep telling my son Adam here not to be too upset if his cartoon only gets a few viewers and disappears. They're mostly doing it for the experience." "You never know," Adam said with a glint in his eye. "It may become world famous and run for 1,000,000 years." "If it's going to run for 1,000,000 years, neither one of us will be around to see it," his father replied, unperturbed. "Leo is the only part we've actually cast. We thought we'd have a little reading and see what clicks, with the intent of splitting the rest of the voices between you." The Youngs turned to Tony. "Do you think you can do some animals?" Adam asked. "Your website didn't have any animal samples."
"Yes, of course,"
Tony slurred, his hungover brain still full of Twillikers and an unshakable fantasy of Az sprawled on his bed. For a terrible moment he thought he'd failed right there, but the two Youngs smiled broadly. "Simon the Snake! That was a perfect Simon the Snake!" Adam shouted.
"So glad you think so,"
Tony said, this time on purpose. When in doubt, claim you did it on purpose and take the credit. That was Tony's motto. It was a mad idea. A bunch of older teenagers and a retired office worker creating a cartoon based on ridiculous stories about a shower curtain, some plushies, and a reptile? Doomed. Utterly doomed. It would launch on YouTube, get about 10 views, and die by episode 3. Everyone, including half its creators, thought so. So did Tony and Az, who got sorted into their various characters, did a quick read-through, then pounded through both scripts in a single recording session. Everyone shook hands all around, and the voice actors wandered back into their lives, assuming that they'd never see each other or Adam's Animals production ever again. A month later, just when Tony was trying to figure out how to pay his latest traffic ticket, and Az was despairing over getting a stain on his only jacket, another 2 scripts and a contract dropped into their email. To be continued in Chapter 2.
Thank you for reading. Please drop by the archive and let the author know what you thought of their work.